Los seres que se encuentran con Nanci Danison le muestran una historia de la humanidad en la Tierra muy diferente a la que ella ha estudiado en escuelas convencionales del sistema, donde hacen una clara separación entre la era de los dinosaurios y la del hombre. Pero lo mostrado a Nanci le sugiere una primera etapa del ser humano conviviendo con ellos. Nota: en Ica, Perú, se han encontrado cientos de piezas y piedras antiguas en las que se representa a seres humanos conviviendo con dinosaurios.
Then went into what near-death experiencers call a life review. You know, these beings were really excited to see what happened in my life, and I kind of projected it on like a big bubble. Picture a soap bubble, and you know how soap bubble, you know, they're filming on the outside and things kind of swirl around, the colors move, and you look at it different ways, you see different things. It was like Nancy's 43 years of living were all on that bubble, scenes like scenes from a movie. But it included not just like the video of what you would see in a movie, but it's every sensory impression that this body had ever taken in. Every sight, every sound, every smell, every touch. I can remember seeing skies, like all kinds of skies. Skies when I was a little kid, you know, stormy skies. I distinctly remember seeing the sky outside the window when I was a private pilot. And I remember seeing the sky outside my windows when I was flying, and this rainbow that I had seen and tried to fly through. I remember distinctly seeing the sky outside my window in my office, my old law firm. I also remember like different bits and pieces of sensory information that were, you know, kind of floating around this bubble. I was inside the bubble. There was one being of light inside the bubble with me. The others were on the outside of the bubble, but they were entering into my life as though they were physically entering into this body and living it. So it's like one of them could enter into this moment in my life and be me experiencing this moment. And then they move on and sample something else. And sometimes they would like enter into my life and just watch it as an observer, and like an invisible observer. Other times they would be in my body as them, and other times they would be in my body as me. And I was watching them do this, and I was like, who knew? I mean, this is the most fantastic thing I'd ever seen. So I wasn't paying any attention to my life review. And, you know, I'm sure you've read stories about people, you know, when their life flashes in front of their eyes, and they see all these things, and they, you know, realize, oh, they should have done this, they should have done that. I was vaguely aware that while my life was being flashed on this soap bubble, that I could see everything that I had done and feel it, and feel how it impacted every single person who was either in proximity to me or in proximity to the person who experienced it. So, for example, it's like I would feel how Janet felt about this moment, and then how maybe her whole family felt when she goes back and says, well, this is what Nancy said about, you know, I could feel the ripples or the repercussions from every single person that I'd ever touched. So I was barely aware of that. I wasn't paying much attention because I was so enthralled with these light beings, you know, in and out of my life, you know. Beyond that, I was getting huge downloads of everything I ever wanted to know. I call it universal knowledge. It was all the truths of the universe. Who am I? Who is God? What's the purpose of life? What's the meaning of life? Why was I on earth? Where's heaven? Where's hell? Where are the angels? You know, why isn't this anything like what I expected from my religion? Everything. All the questions that had tormented me before I died. All the things I'd been trying so hard to figure out from reading books and talking to people. All the answers were there. And I got this knowing that all you have to do to get those answers, to get that information from universal knowledge, you know, just the term that several people have attached to it, is focus your attention and intention. Your attention on whatever it is you want to know, and your intention to know it. And the knowings were not like something you read in a book. It was knowing on an experiential level. Knowing it as though I had lived it. Knowing it as though I was so intimately familiar with it. You know, it was second nature to me. All of it. And while it was coming, I was both going, wow, you know, that's a surprise. And I used to know that. I remember that. Yeah, it's all coming back to me. I remember all this stuff. One of the things that particularly stood out in my mind was the fact that, I hadn't seen any angels. I hadn't seen my parents. Well, one of my parents had been dead for a number of years at this point. I had a dead sister. I had dead grandparents. Didn't see any of them. So, and I didn't expect it to. I didn't see any angels. I didn't see Jesus. I didn't see God. I didn't. It wasn't like, what I had read about. And I was in Catholic school for 12 years, and then I went to Methodist college for 4 years, and then I studied Judaism because I was going to convert. And I had been reading, Buddhism and Taoism, and I had a lot of exposure to religions, and I'd taken comparative religions in college, and it wasn't like anything that I had read. So I wanted to know, okay, universal knowledge, why isn't this like what I expected? And in response to that attention and intention, I saw kind of a documentary. This is the only thing that came to me in a human-like frame of reference. It's a documentary of the history of planet Earth and where religion fit in, how religion had developed and how it had evolved and where it was now. I saw the planet being formed. I saw the first humans in the first epoch superimposed over this documentary, like on a movie screen. It's kind of like a graphic at the top that had a timeline on it. And it was marked off, these many years is the first epoch, these many years is the second epoch, and then from here on is the third epoch. And the words epoch came into my head. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. That's the way it's pronounced in the afterlife. I could see that there was one species of human in the first epoch that evolved from lower life forms, developed and was killed off at the same time that the Earth re-terraformed, which killed off all the dinosaurs and pretty much all the old, extinct animal species. A second species of humans evolved in the second epoch, and that's what we are. I saw that there's a third species of humans evolving for the third epoch. And all of this is in my next book called Backwards Beliefs, so I won't go into much detail here. But I was fascinated by watching humans evolve and watching their fear create the basis for the most primitive of religions, and then how that fear and superstition got kind of multiplied and created these really complicated and intricate and fascinating religions. And I watched the whole thing thinking, if I'd known all that, I certainly would have lived my life differently. And at the same time thinking, aren't they cute? Aren't they just the most adorable and sweet and wonderful and primitive and unsophisticated and just the most lovable little primitive creatures? At the end of, or actually as I was going through this documentary, I felt kind of cheated, misled, disappointed, duped. There's not really a good word for it, but it's in that neighborhood, by what I'd studied as a human. I felt like my education had let me down. All those years of religious training, all that reading, didn't even come anywhere close to the truth as I saw it in this documentary. And believe me when I say, what you see in the afterlife, you are absolutely convinced beyond a doubt is true. When I look back on human life, it was like reading a comic book in comparison. It was not real. And I was flabbergasted by how unreal human life is, how I could possibly have ever thought that I was a human being, and that was life. I could not get over what kind of mechanism it must have taken to convince me that human life was real, when I knew darn well it wasn't, now that I'm in the light and I've got all this access to all this information and I saw, the truths of the universe. So I'm feeling kind of, I would have done a better job of Nanci had I known all this.
La historia ha sido manipulada para sosegar las ansias sobre el cuestionamiento del origen de las especies y del ser humano en el planeta. Para ello han hecho válidas teorías ridículas sustentadas por la palabra de reconocidos investigadores y científicos de todos los tiempos. De este modo, todos los demás seres humanos enrolados en múltiples actividades diarias y sin un momento para la investigación propia, optan por creer ciegamente en estos líderes impuestos por el sistema. Y créeme, no todo es como lo cuentan.
Dudar de lo aprendido, cuestionar de lo enseñado y no aceptar lo establecido ofrece una responsabilidad que otorga poder. El poder del libre camino hacia la evolución.
No olvides suscribirte para recibir noticias sobre nuevos videos en este canal. Gracias por tu atención.